Hello and welcome to another edition of Toys from the Attic. For today's episode, I thought we'd be taking a look at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Battle Shell Leonardo. So without further ado, let's open this guy up. Alright, so here we have Battle Shell Leonardo. He comes in your standard blister card packaging. I mean, it has the label right here, Nickelodeon, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You get a picture of all the four brothers right here. You get the display of Leonardo, the Battle Shell logo right here, and then you get a nice picture of showing how all the weapons kind of fit in the back. But that's not what makes this packaging so cool. I think it's this little window in the back here. Now, this is pretty much the same kind of series, just modernized. From back in the 90s, they had Battle Shell Turtles from the first line, but the packaging never had this little window in the back here so you can kind of see inside and see how everything kind of fits in there. I think that's actually really cool, and I'm actually kind of wishing they did it a long time ago. Now, as far as the back goes, you kind of have a picture of all the different weapons he comes with. You get a nice little new, slightly updated bio on him, and then you get a little picture here of the four other brothers in the line. The four brothers in the line, some of the other good guys, and then some of the new and old bad guys. You got the Rat King, Spider Bite, the Mousers, and the new Shredder. Hopefully I'll be able to get one of him someday. But that's pretty much as far as the packaging goes. So next video, let's open them up and take a look inside. Okay, so here we have Battle Shell Leonardo. Now, as far as show accuracy goes, I mean, he's a lot more spot on. He looks like he just stepped right out of the cartoon. I mean, look at that head sculpt. The hands are a lot more squared off, just like in the cartoon, and he's sporting the little three toes that they have, rather than just those long things like the original Leonardo had. He still has his same points of articulation. I mean, his arm can move almost 360 degrees. His elbows kind of bend, and other than being hindered by the elbow pads, they can almost move the same way. His wrists can swivel around. His head's on this nice ball joint, and his legs can move around just the same as well as his knees. The front of his shell is made out of a little bit harder plastic, so you get a little bit more resistance if you're wanting to get him in kind of a sitting pose or some sort of other action pose. But yeah, that's kind of just nitpicking on that end. One of the downsides, though, is, well, there's a few downsides with this guy. One is he doesn't kind of stand properly. I mean, his legs aren't completely flat like the original Leonardo or any of the others in this line, and that's kind of a disappointment. I'm wondering if this is just a bit of quality control and the legs were kind of switched around on me, or the feet, I should say. Like, this foot should be on this side and that one should be on that side. I can kind of understand that, because looking at them, if you're going to have someone who puts these together, I mean, they look like they go on both sides. They have no real indication of what foot goes where. And after probably doing a million of these things, you kind of just forget. I'm going to take a hairdryer to them later and see if that will fix the problem. The other thing that's kind of on the downside is this little backpack part here just pops off so easily. I mean, there's hardly anything that keeps it on. I mean, even if just opening up the battle shell, this just pops off way too easily. I mean, this is gonna, if you have this and your kids are gonna play with it, it's gonna get lost super easy. Compared to the original Leonardo, I mean, that's really stuck in there, and that feels like it's really part of the guy. It will pop off with a lot of force, but not as easy as this, and that's kind of a disappointment. The other thing that's kind of sad is the weapons. I mean, yeah, he comes with his two swords, but comparing it to the first one, pardon this, I've painted a little bit right here because I'm trying to customize my Leos. Yeah, this original swords, they just look a lot thicker and a lot sturdier. These ones just seem real flimsy and kind of cheap. It's kind of a little bit sad. Also, because the handles are so thin, you have to have them in there just right. In order for him to hold it properly, you got to make sure that they're in there just right. And that's the same with a lot of the other weapons. I mean, he came with his little shuriken right here. That fits in there sort of okay, just like before. You got to make sure it's facing the right way, and even then it's kind of barely holding. He comes with two ninja stars that you have to kind of rest on his thumb right there, otherwise they're just not going to stay in. And he comes with this little tiny dagger right here. This one I'm really disappointed in, because it's kind of a nice little tool that you could pop out, but you gotta have the handle just in there ever so in order for it to hold it. Now that could just fall out real easily. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm kind of disappointed with this guy. Anyways, let's compare him to the first Leonardo in this line. Alright, so here we have Battle Shell Leonardo next to the original Leonardo. And yeah, there's a big difference between these guys. Especially in the heads. You can see this has the more cartoonish head, where this one has a little bit more of the traditional Ninja Turtles 80s style head. Just a little bit. I mean, the gritted teeth, the more pronounced nose, the head's a lot larger. The shell, front of the shell, I mean, yeah, I've painted some of the cut marks and scrapes black in here, but this shell doesn't have any type of marks or anything on it, which is kind of a shame. I really like that on this one. It gave it a little bit more feel and detail, like they've actually have been fighting and practicing with each other. And there goes the sword case again. I told you guys it pops off real easily. The hands are a lot different. I mean, they're a little bit more rounded on this one, where they maintain the square cartoony shape. And you can definitely see that there's a lot more mass and bulk with this one, where this one's a little bit more thin. This one definitely feels a little bit more like a teenager. This one feels like he might be a little bit older, like he's maybe 19, just about heading into 20s. This one feels a little bit more like he's 15 or 16. There's a lot of difference in the feet. I mean, they have the little nubby, cute toes right here, where these ones have the more gnarly toes. The square pads are a lot, not square pads, knee pads are square in here. Ugh, can't talk right now. And then these ones are a lot rounder and have a lot more grit and detail to them. So that's, I don't know, I kind of like this one more as far as details goes, but this one's a lot more show accurate. I mean, it's a fairly decent toy if you want to get it for someone or just want to have it as a collection. The other thing that's a little sad is this one's skin tone is just smooth plastic. I mean, they didn't put any extra detail in there. I guess to cut corners or other stuff, they just didn't bother. Where this one, you can definitely tell there's like little pock marks, skin tone. It almost looks like you can see the pores in there. It's just a lot more detail, and it makes it feel more like he is a reptile or some living creature. But comparison and contrast, there's only a few minor differences. Let's take a look at the Battle Shell Leonardo next to the original Battle Shell Leonardo. And man, we've come a long way since the 80s. I'm not even going to bother to go into how show accurate these guys are, just because the original cartoon was kind of all over the place with detail, and yeah, so sometimes the characters meshed up, sometimes they didn't. But you could see a mass improvement since the 80s. I mean, this guy only has a few points of articulation, the arms only move side to side, and then these, they only just swivel in a 360 manner. I mean, you can't even pose them anywhere else, and they're always stuck in these dynamic poses, where this guy, you can get him in some still good poses. Comparatively, I really appreciate that a lot more. I like being able to pose or customize my action figures and just position them however I wanted. Now the Battle Shell, it works pretty much the same way, and they have made some improvements since here. The hinges on the original guys just kind of snapped on there, and with a little bit of forcing, they could just pop right off, and you had a potential to lose the actual shell that encased all the weapons. Where this one, it looks like it has a nice little metal pin right in there, so if you tear this off, you're just going to ruin your entire figure, unless you want to unscrew it from right there, but that's your choice. So there's no real fear of this shell getting lost. The shell, though, feels like it's made of kind of a cheap plastic, whereas this one feels a lot harder and a lot more rigid. Another comparison between the two is just the amount of space you have to store all your weapons. The original one took up the whole chest cavity. I mean, you can just see the sockets right in there to hold the figure, and this goes right straight up to the front shell. One downside, though, is there was no real compartments. I mean, you just kind of had to shove all your weapons in there and hope that they fit. And a lot of times, the weapons that you got, there were more weapons than you can actually fit in there, and you kind of had to use your brain to figure out how you're going to fit everything in there. And I mean, there was this little spot here for the Ninja Stars, but I don't know anybody who used the Ninja Stars. I mean, they're just these tiny little, almost Carl's Jr. size stars. I didn't quite play with these guys all that much, and I don't know. It was just because you had to fit everything in there. It was just kind of a little bit more of a disappointment with me. I enjoyed all the other weapons, but yeah. Now, these guys, on the other hand, I do like how every little weapon has a little compartment in here. I mean, it has a little spot. You can take his little knife right here and fit it right in there. And you have a little peg right here for all of his Ninja Stars. And then if you're worried about it all falling out, there's a little peg up here that you just put this little shuriken on. Slide that down and then just... let me try to get that. Just try to get that in this little slot right here. And it actually stays in there pretty well, so you don't have to worry about if this accidentally pops open, all the weapons are going to fall out over the floor like with these guys. So, I like that a lot more. I mean, yeah, sure, you don't have as much space, but everything fits in there a lot nicer, especially with Leonardo here. Um, I would definitely say there's a much improvement over the original 80s line. Anyways, this has been a look at Battle Shell Leonardo.
Once again, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed what you've seen today, please feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment below in the comment section. Any advice for the show will be greatly appreciated. Who knows, something you suggest may appear on the show in the future.